Earlier this week, I was sitting at my desk doing some work, and as I sat there, I noticed that my body was becoming tense and also that my breath was becoming slightly more effortful and a little bit shallow. Now, as a result of noticing that, what I did was I just started to bring some attention or more gentle focus to my body and my breath. I chose to explore letting go of effort and tension in my body. And at the same time, I also practiced softening and letting go of the tension that I was experiencing in my breath. And over the course of maybe a few seconds, I noticed a shift in my visceral inner experience. That is to say, that the way I was experiencing my body moved from a state of tension and what we might call tightness to a sensation or series of sensations that felt more pleasant, that felt more balanced and calm, and therefore, as a result, probably more physiologically balanced. Now, if I was to rewind, let's say 10 years, and go back to a point in time in my life where I was running my own company, where I was living in Nigeria, where I was leading a very, very stressful and busy life and busy days, moving from here to there, rushing around to meetings, trying to meet deadlines, not sleeping till late at night for being on client calls and up late writing emails, not sleeping well, constantly pushing myself whenever I had spare time, going out and partying and drinking and so on and so forth. And really the only time that I ever got to rest was when I collapsed into my bed. And on the days when I wasn't experiencing insomnia, I was able to sleep, or on the days when I had a hangover at the weekend. So at that point, it's fair to say that I really had a very limited, if we could say perhaps a non-existent relationship with my breath. And this is my topic for today, which is about how developing a relationship with my breath over the past few years in my practice has literally transformed my life in terms of not just physiologically, but also psychologically and emotionally. So back in the time that I just described, not only was I experiencing all this stress in my life, but at the same time, I was experiencing high blood pressure, I was experiencing chronic back pain and also chronic fatigue, which literally made me feel like I was constantly experiencing a hangover or just a complete depletion of my energy. The only time I ever noticed my breath was when I was in the gym exercising and perhaps was out of breath because I was running, or because I felt so overwhelmingly stressed that I felt a very, very tight feeling in my chest, and as a result I was experiencing shortness of breath or short breathing essentially. Now, through yoga practice and through breath being one of the core or central aspects of yoga, I've been gradually able to develop a relationship with my breath. Now, what does this mean? Developing a relationship with my breath initially was just a result of practicing asana or movement on the mat and being guided to slow down and lengthen my breath. Now, at first I found this really challenging, but over time it became more and more easy to create a long and slow breath. And gradually I noticed that when I was breathing long and slow, I was able to feel a lot calmer. When I started to take the breath practice beyond asana and into what I would call the preliminary stages of pranayama, where you're really working with imbalances in the breath. For example, are you breathing in too much into the chest, or are you breathing in too much into the belly? Are you having a struggle with your inhale, or are you having a struggle with your exhale? Are you unable to generate a breath that feels pleasant and calm? Are you able to engage with what is called natural breath, where you're essentially making no effort and you're just allowing the breath to flow? Now, by gradually developing the skills to be able to assess the imbalances in our breath, and at the same time to start to work towards moving towards a sense of balance with our breath, so that we have an equal breath in chest and belly. Our inhales are as equally manageable as our exhales, and perhaps even begin to extend the length of our exhales, we gradually start to shift our own psychological and physiological state. And it's interesting, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, he tells us quite clearly that when we are facing obstacles to a movement towards peace or towards stability, we notice this not just in terms of negative thinking perhaps, but also in terms of physiologically in our body we experience strain, but also in terms of an impact on our breath, shortness of our breath. And so as a result of this, if we can see that we have these patterns that are being loaded by the mind into the breath and into the body, yoga tells us that we can work through those same mechanisms that have been disturbed upwards towards the mind, not only to create a more balanced physiological state, not only to create a state that feels more balanced in our breath, but as a result of that, for the mind to experience that too. Which is why it says in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika that when the mind is disturbed, the breath is disturbed, and therefore also when the breath is calm, the mind is calm too. So by gradually becoming intimate with our breath, and intimacy is literally knowing the inner sensations of the breath, knowing which sensations point towards balance and which sensations point towards imbalance, and gradually developing the capacity to move ourselves into a more regulated breath state. At the same time, by bringing our awareness more fully into the breath and knowing those sensations more intimately, we begin to learn how to breathe in a way that creates a pleasant inner vibration, or a pleasant inner landscape or set of sensations. So imagine if not only you could regulate and balance your breath to be more physiologically in tune, but at the same time you could breathe in a way which literally feels pleasant. Now, when you breathe in a way that feels pleasant, it allows you to move and to gravitate towards a feeling of peace. In addition to this, knowing that feeling of peace that arrives through a calm and stable and long breath, it gives us the opportunity to understand what even a peaceful feeling in our body can be experienced as. That is why right at the start I talked about how the other day when I was sitting at my desk and I felt a little bit of tension arising in my body and my breath, it was due to these practices that I was able to even notice that, and due to these practices that I was gradually able to course correct and soften my breath, soften my body, and guide it towards a more pleasant inner state. And as a result of that, I felt more comfortable in the moment. I was able probably to reduce my blood pressure, reduce my heart rate, reduce the fact that I was using unnecessary effort as a result of perhaps focusing too hard on what I was doing, and therefore allowing my body and my breath to be dragged along into that energy. So this relationship with breath has had such a profound impact on my life on a day-to-day basis. And what it looks like in terms of practice on the mat is exactly the same thing that I teach in all of my group classes, which is that at the beginning and at the end of every practice, we sit with a hand on the heart space, a hand on the belly. We bring our attention to our breath and we practice long, slow, calm inhales without strain, a gentle pause at the top of the inhale, and long, slow, calm exhales, followed by a pause, again without strain. And we maybe do 12 or 16 or 18 of these breaths at the beginning and at the end of a practice. And what that does is it not only starts to calm down our bodies, but it also sends a signal to our mind that something calming is going on. We then choose to place our attention on the breath, and we essentially merge our minds into the experience of the calm and pleasant breath. And as a result of that, the mind gets positively influenced towards peace in that practice. That means, therefore, when we step onto the mat and begin our asana practice, we've already started to integrate our mind into the body and into the breath, but we've also begun to lengthen our breath. Similarly, we are able to understand experientially what a calm breath feels like, which then gives us the sensory intellectual capacity to know that when we are living our day-to-day lives and we feel something going out of balance, usually we can just turn to our breath and body, notice it, and go through the process of relaxing the effort, letting go of tension, and finding ourselves more often than not in a more balanced state. So I'm sharing this because I really would love to encourage all of you to really place breath at the center of your yoga practice. It doesn't have to be a complicated pranayama practice. It could just start by bringing your attention more fully to your breath during asana practice, but also the practice of trying to make the breath more long and more subtle and less strain-filled. As a result of that, over time, if we practice carefully and diligently, we will notice a shift in our breath, a shift in the way that our body feels, and a shift in the way that we experience life. So as always, thank you for joining. I hope you found this video useful, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.